Hey everybody, welcome to CAF Warbird Tube, the show where we talk about World War II, aviation, history, and so much more. Warbird Tube is produced by the Commemorative Air Force, the world's largest flying museum. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and honor through flight and living history experiences. The CAF began the Warbird movement more than 65 years ago, and thanks to the support of individuals like you, we continue to grow strong. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and now our host, Steve Buss. Thanks for watching and keep 'em flying.
Good evening and welcome everyone. All of those of you watching tonight on Facebook or YouTube, glad to have you with us. This is episode number 93 of Warbird Tube, and on tonight's episode we will have the first of several episodes featuring the 12 Planes of Christmas, our year-end fundraiser for the Commemorative Air Force. This evening show is going to feature the WASP Squadron's T-6 Texan. But before we get started, please do us a favor. If you haven't already done so, please take a second to like, share, or subscribe and follow us. And if you do subscribe on YouTube, also click that little bell icon. Just click it. It'll make a little ding noise, and you'll get notifications about new episodes of Warbird Tube when they either go live or are posted. So joining me now from the WASP Squadron, Ellie Dana and Elaine Webb. Good evening, ladies, and welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Well, tell us a little bit first. I'm going to make the assumption, and you know what that does, is that that folks know about the WASP during World War II. But how about just a little background on the WASP organization that was the first time that women flew almost everything that was in the U.S. inventory for aircraft during World War II?
Elaine, you want me to take this and then you fill in on anything I missed?
Sure.
So, Jackie Cochran had a mission to create a training program where women would have a chance to fly in World War II. And it's a long story, but the short story is that when it was finally brought forward, 25,000 women applied. And the requirements were that you had to be a pilot. And as you can imagine, in 1942, there were not that many women pilots. So these were women who were really interested in flying. Over 1,800 were accepted. And after completing a 5 to 6 month training program, approximately 1,100 of them graduated and went on to fly and release men so that they could go fly combat, because the women did not fly in combat. They flew airplanes over 60 million miles, and they flew every aircraft type that was flown by the Army Air Force at that time. In the course of training and in time of their mission, there were 38 women who were killed in action. Not combat action, it was action. These women went through the same kind of training that the men did. So they did all the military training and all the exercises. They lived out in West Texas, and you can go there today if you'd like, to Avenger Field, where the World War II National WASP Museum exists, and you can actually see the facilities that they engage in. The most important thing I would say is that they were dedicated. They were contract workers, so they were not part of the military, and they had to find their own way there. They had to find their own way home, and should they die while in service, they were shipped home at their families' or their friends' expense. They were amazing women, and they were leaders in the whole field of women in aviation.
Elaine, anything you'd like to add on to that?
Yes. Both founders, Nancy Harkness Love and Jackie Cochran, were women with a vision of what women could do to support the war effort. They truly wanted to fly for their country, and they flew for many different reasons. Some flew because they had a family member in service. Some flew because they had lost a family member and were flying for them, but they all wanted to contribute to ending the war. Nancy was the commander of the WAFs, and Jackie became, when the two combined, Jackie Cochran was the WASP leader.
Good. And we're looking right now at a picture. This picture is unusual for several different reasons. First of all, it's Sweetwater, Texas. That's snow on the ground, so that makes it unusual. The WASP are, I don't know if they're doing formation training instead of in the dirt, in the snow, and where the airplanes are supposed to be, or they're just having fun. But also the steerman that is in the background, right behind the WASP, is actually part of the DFW wing, and it also traces itself back to Sweetwater and Avenger Field.
They are planning a mission in the snow, apparently. And one of the things I like about this photograph is the chalk behind the wheel of the steerman in the foreground.
It doesn't look like that would be very healthy for a steerman tire. Now, tell us the significance of the statue and the pool here.
That's the wishing well. And after a WASP soloed, they were traditionally tossed into the wishing well. It was a rite of passage.
Awesome. Now, through the years, Commemorative Air Force has had an opportunity to reconnect with veterans, and especially in the last 10, 15 years or so with some of the surviving WASP members. What are we looking at here?
What we see here are the signatures of every surviving WASP that we have had the honor of flying in Nella. There are 7 of them. Marty Wall was flown in that airplane actually before the CAF acquired her. And then Jane Doyle is the first WASP that we flew in Nella after she appeared in Oshkosh in 2017. Now, Jane Doyle has only signed once, but I believe that Jane actually managed to fly in Nella 4 times. And she is the person in the back seat when you see the traditional pictures that we show of Nella.
Good, good. And we have a couple of before and after pictures of some of the WASP who have been able to fly in the T-6 Nella. This is Catherine Hildebrand, correct?
Yes. She had an interesting career before the WASP. She test flew TBMs.
Very good. And here she is flying in the backseat of the T-6.
In 2018 at Pecan Plantation in Texas.
Nice. And Nell Bright, if you've studied WASP history, you recognize her name as well.
She is such a spark plug. You would love visiting with her. She has wonderful stories to tell, and we're so fortunate to have her close relationship with the squadron, sharing her photographs and her stories. Very
nice.
supportive.
This is her again in 2018 in Pecan Plantation.
Great.
And our favorite repeat visitor, Jane Doyle, again in Nella.
Millie Young, I think.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. One of the things that happened when the WASP program disbanded before the end of World War II is maybe a bit of a misunderstanding. There was some politics involved. There's a lot of things that were happening in the country at that time. But the WASP who had trained, they had military training. They did everything that the male cadets were doing. They were almost promised that they would be granted veteran status, and that didn't happen. And in fact, for many years, the story of the WASP just sort of faded into history. And it wasn't until females started flying in high performance jets in the Air Force later on in the 70s and 80s that the media was coming up and saying, oh, look, these are the first women to fly, Air Force airplanes. And some of the WASP kind of raised their hands and said, hold on, remember us?
Actually,
and that's when the story really started to blossom. And, through the efforts of the WASP squadron and many other historians, the WASP story, like the Tuskegee Airmen, is now a much greater part of history than it had been, 30, 40 years ago.
Steve, I think you encapsulated that really well. The WASP, the people who wanted to be WASPs, they knew that they were contract workers. And you're right, they were virtually promised, but there was no guarantee. They were contract people. And when they were disbanded, they were not happy about it, but that was the deal. And maybe they weren't happy about it, but they went on about their lives and they accomplished all kinds of amazing things. It was in 1976 when the Air Force said, looky here, first women flying military airplanes, and the WASP reconvened and they became a force to be reckoned with and said, no. These are not the first women. These are great women, but these are not, we are. And that is exactly how that story came forward.
And culminating in 2009 with the Congressional Gold Medal. All the WASP received that, signed into law, and really quite a high honor for them as well. And eventually now WASP are allowed to be buried at Arlington National Cemetery. So it's almost come full circle, and they do have veteran status now. So whatever happened in 1944 has been somewhat corrected, but you're right. I've had the pleasure of meeting several WASP, and never have they had any resentment toward the government or how they were treated. Like so many veterans, male and female, from World War II, when the war was over, when their service was done, they went back home and they picked up their lives and continued on. And there's just it's an overused phrase, the greatest generation, but for so many of these, the veterans, they really do set an example for all of us to try to live up to.
It's puzzling why their service would have been secret. I don't understand what secret needed to be protected.
Right. And that's depending on the books you read or articles, when the male pilots were coming back from service, they wanted to continue flying, and here these women were basically taking their jobs. So, politics gets involved, sexism, whatever, and it just, is an unfortunate. Go ahead.
But it is also cultural. Mm-hmm. It's hard for us to remember back. So I'm older. Elaine and I are of an older generation, and I can tell you that early on in my career, it wasn't that someone said, "Oh, you have to defer to the boys." Early on in my career, it was the accepted culture that men with children were preferred candidates for a job because men with children had to support their family. Women were not seen as independent or needing to support a family. So some of the things, if we look at it now, in looking back, we say, oh, that's unreasonable. But culturally, at that time, our society accepted the idea that here come qualified pilots back from the war, and why should women have those jobs when these men are going to support their families? And, it's a cultural thing, and we cannot, this is my view, we cannot today say that they were treated unfairly. Yes, we can through today's eyes, but not through the eyes of what was going on then. Doesn't mean we like everything that happened, but we cannot take up a banner and get angry because that's the way it was.
Right. Well, one of the reasons that we're here is to talk about the T-6. We've called her Nella, and we're going to get to the story of where that name comes from in a little bit. But this is the airplane as it was before it was accepted into the CAF and into the WASP squadron. Tell us a little bit about the airplane as it was, and how was the history of it being an authentic WASP T-6 based at Sweetwater Avenger Field? How did that come to light?
I think, Elaine, you were involved in that, weren't you?
Not really. The research for that was done by Cotter and the pilot.
Krieg.
Yes, that was done really before the airplane came to us, and the restoration was guided by Keegan Chetwynd after we received the airplane. But it's so well documented. All of the assignment cards, the file is really good on this airplane.
Great.
Actually, I'll tell you a funny story about it. So when we got the airplane, the CAF got the airplane, we believed that the plane had been in Sweetwater from June of 44 to December of 44. And Elaine and I were doing research on some other things, and we went back and got the records again and looked again, and she actually had arrived in Sweetwater in June of 43, not 44. So she was there for a year and a half.
Wow. What was that like to go back in the archives, and I know what it's like to go back and read history and things like that, but when you can get something that has a piece of history and tie it to a physical thing like an airplane or whatever artifact you have, what was that like, Elaine?
It's magical.
It's magical.
When you come across something that proves a WASP has flown your airplane, it is indescribable. And it's hard to do, because an assignment card is nothing more than a reporting card. It doesn't mean that an airplane was actually stationed at the reporting base. So finding a photograph of a WASP in an airplane or on an airplane that has your serial number is a really serious, involved endeavor.
I agree with that. And then the day that we sent a note out to all of the WASP that we knew and their families, and we got back a picture of Jane Doyle's logbook showing she'd flown Nella. And then there's another logbook on display in the Montrose Regional Airport in a case that honors Peggy Moynihan. And there's Nella in the logbook. Elaine, there's no better word, magical. It's the most amazing thing.
And B. Haydu's logbook shows her flew Nella as well. Yep. And there's a photograph of a WASP.
Connie Turner.
Yes, with the airplane. And Dory Marland is sitting on the wing of our airplane at Sweetwater. She was a movie star and a dancer. The WASP were everyone. They were farm girls, models. They just crossed the entire spectrum of women in America at that time.
It's really also a cross section of all of America coming together during World War II to support the war effort. When did the CAF actually take delivery of the airplane, and then how long did it take to get it from the paint scheme we just saw to the paint scheme we're looking at now?
Actually, that was before my time. I know when this day was and when she arrived in the CAF fleet, all painted, but I don't know. Do you know, Elaine, when she was actually acquired by the CAF?
I don't know offhand.
So here's what I do know. This is Oshkosh,
right.
2017. And she arrived there all painted and just looking beautiful. And that was her first appearance in public. And that's Jane Doyle in the back flying with Rob Krieg in the front. I know that the restoration was done in the Georgia facility.
Okay, Air Base Georgia. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they did the job, and they actually had some leftover paint, and that's how I knew they were looking to say, do we want the paint? I said, yeah, we want the paint. So, but how long it took them to restore it, I don't know. But I'm sure it was a long time.
Yeah, I believe it it's not as long as like some restorations have been. It might have been 18 months to 2 years to get the airplane redone, because it was in pretty good shape when it was donated to the CAF. So yeah, so you've got some great photos of it as well.
The thing about seeing an airplane is so different than reading a book or going to a research library. You can read a story, but if you hear a round engine purr, it's a different experience.
Yes,
It certainly is.
They're alive. And if you see the expression on someone's face who had a relative connected to Nella or to the WASP, it is so rewarding.
And we're looking, we mentioned the name Nella, and this is one of the photos that maybe gives you a little inspiration as to where that name came from. But explain the name itself and sort of where the genesis of that was from.
I had seen a photograph of our airplane sitting next to 20 feet at some point. And I actually dream about airplanes. And one night I saw this picture in my dream, and I thought, Fifi Nella, after the WASP mascot. So that's how it came to be. When I shared that dream with the squadron, I had no idea that I was actually naming our airplane Nella. But it's taken, and I like it.
It certainly has. And here's another shot. Gives you the two aircraft together, and the airplanes do appear together on tour throughout the year.
Yes, they do. We as a squadron, and Nella in particular, are very honored to be part of the Air Power History Tour. We travel together, we share pilots, we share all the same headaches and all the same weather. And because of our partnership, we have been able to take Nella over a good portion of the United States and continue to care for her and improve her and repair her and share her with. In 2021, we had 385 riders. Wow. And we put over 250 hours on her. This year, she will come up with about 310 riders, and I think the total number will be about 225 hours. So she's very, very busy. I understand she is the second busiest airplane in the CAF fleet.
Well, very good. And part of why we're talking about Nella tonight is this is part of the 12 Planes of Christmas, and it's our year-end fundraiser. And what will the money raised help take care of on this airplane? What are we trying to improve on the T-6?
The T-6, as Nella is equipped today, she has vacuum instruments. Those instruments are heavy, and they are not as reliable as instruments are today. So our plan is to install a Garmin GI 275. And not most of us walk around knowing exactly what a GI-275 is, but first of all, Garmin is the noted provider of aircraft instrumentation. And we would do Nella a disservice to have anything less than the best for her. Number two, the GI-275 combines several instruments into a color touch screen. And really, this is about airspeed, altitude, and attitude. And it allows us to have a really clear picture of where she is. And it also performs ADS-B, so we can take out our old ADS-B and put in a new ADS-B in-out. This, for those of us who are not conversant in this all day, every day, here's how we know that it's the right thing to do. We have about 16 pilots that are certified to fly Nella. 14 of them say this is exactly what should be in Nella. Therefore, even if we don't understand every word and we don't know exactly what it means to them when they're flying, we know that this is the right move. It's not inexpensive, and through some fairly careful financial planning, we are able to fund more than half of the project. So we are just raising funds for the rest of the project. So we're pretty excited about this. And as a matter of fact, right now, we are installing the new equipment.
Okay. So you're putting your mouth where your money where your mouth is, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
So if you can help, whatever donation you can make. I understand there's a few different levels of recognition that go along with this as well.
Yes, we are once again grateful to Elaine. She had this great idea. We have created some commemorative plaques, limited quantity because we only had limited funds and we were managing our business. So we have limited funds to create these plaques, and we had 16 of them when we started the campaign, and we have, as of today, we have 3 available.
Okay.
And they are available to people who donate more than $250. And the officers of the squadron are matching the first $1,200.
So with the upgrade in the avionics, and normally for CAF aircraft, the winter time is maintenance time. So you anticipate that Nella will be up and ready to go up on tour first thing in spring?
Well, actually, she will be, as of this moment, we expect to see Nella on the road, headed to Houston for an event in mid-January. She'll come back from there, and then she'll go on the spring tour with the Air Power History Tour in February and March. She will finish that. She'll go into her annual inspection in Florida, and when that is done, she'll go to homecoming at the end of April in Sweetwater.
Speaking of Sweetwater, how many times has the airplane been back to Avenger Field now?
Oh, goodness,
For
we'd
sure.
have the movie.
Well, she was there for the creation of the Rise Above movie.
Right.
And she's been back 3 times for homecoming. So she's a star, and she likes to go there, and people love to see her.
Oh, I'm sure. And with all of our World War II veterans, the women who were in the Women Airforce Service Pilots are advancing in age. For homecoming, are any of them still able to still make the trip to Sweetwater, or is it mostly families now that are continuing the legacy of the WASP?
One WASP was at the past homecoming. So collecting their history is really important to get done.
Yes. And that too, not only to be able to share the WASP story with current and upcoming generations. But as you mentioned, being able to share those stories. And before we came on the air, you were talking. One of you was talking about the fact that a instructor pilot who was at Sweetwater, the family saw the airplane and forwarded some documents to the squadron as well.
Elaine's point, Shirley Cruz was at the last homecoming, and we actually have pictures of Elaine and Shirley together, and some of the other family, WASP families. So what's happening now is that I think we have less than a half a dozen surviving WASP. And the families now come to homecoming. Is that not correct, Elaine?
Yes.
So the families come to homecoming and they bring pictures of their mothers and their grandmothers and they talk about. We have friends who come too who say, "Oh, I knew this WASP and we were good friends and she told me this." So we are beginning to preserve new history, I guess we would call it, and family memories. And it's really a wonderful thing.
Both Nell Bright and B. Haydu's daughters were at homecoming this year.
And the Jane Doyle's family, 2 of her daughters and her granddaughter were also there.
Yes,
They all
and I
came around.
didn't know that until it was too late.
Right. I know. They all came out to the airplane and they all got their pictures taken because it was a big homecoming for them.
Yes, and Elaine, you mentioned the movie. I would be remiss if we didn't tell folks about that as well. It was a production several years in the making, but is now ready for public consumption.
Yeah, I think you can see it when the Aviation Center National Education Center is open. They do show the movie in the front entrance hall. So I think that's probably up on the website that explains when you can see it.
Okay. Elaine, did you have something to add about the movie?
Not really. It's there are 2 versions of it, a shorter one and a longer one, which is a good introduction to the WASP.
And a good portion of it filmed in Sweetwater as well.
Absolutely.
Well, as you go around the country and tour the airplane, you've also collected some good stories of not only from veterans and families, but from some young people who've been influenced by the T-6 and the WASP story, including this young lady right here.
Blaze. Blaze is 13 years old. This was her first flying experience, and we have a few pictures of her. You can see her smile, and as you go through looking at these pictures, you will also notice that she probably could have stayed there all day. She was having a wonderful time. And then there is a short video that explains exactly how she felt about it.
Let's take a look at that video.
It was so amazing. I was almost crying. It was so beautiful, and it was the most awesome thing I've ever done, and I want to do it again. So.
Blaze has not only been inspired by her flight in Nella, but she is also an artist, and she has drawn us 2 sketches. One, she is showing the transition from a AT-6 to a current fighter, and in her note, she talks about how inspiring it was. And then in the next one, she has redone the evolution of man, woman, and this is her version of how things work.
She's a pretty good artist too.
She's a very good artist.
And then there are some other testimonials from young people who have been exposed to the WASP story as well. Are these collected from on the road or at the National Aviation Education Center?
They were from Wings Over Dallas when we did Letters to a Veteran. The young women and girls were so impressed with the WASP story and actually in awe of the women and the things they did for the time in which they lived. So that's part of our mission, inspire young people to seek a career in aviation.
Very good. The WASP squadron itself is not necessarily limited to any one geographic location. Some of our CAF wings are in a specific location, a specific airport, but the WASP squadron is really universal. It's everywhere. How can someone get involved if they'd like to do more than just see the airplane fly?
There are 62 of us as of Friday, and we are, as you say, all over the U.S. We update the squadron at least once a month on what we're doing, and we offer all kinds of opportunities. Sometimes we are fortunate that many people want to participate. We offer merchandise with the squadron patch, and we offer anyone that's a member of the squadron is welcome to come and be a speaker at a tour stop, come and join us when we're doing a presentation at an event. We also have lots of room for officers in our squadron if someone would like to participate in that.
Excellent. What's the best way to get in touch with the squadron?
We have a website, cafwaspsquadron.org, or if you just want to drop a note, you can actually write to waspsquadron@att.net, and we will respond within 24 hours. And you can follow us on Facebook, CAF WASP Squadron. We post on Tuesdays and Thursdays. One posting is about a particular WASP, and the other posting is about whatever is going on. Okay. And currently we have about 450,000 people who have viewed our posts since May of 2020.
Congratulations. So interest in the WASP squadron and the WASP story continues to build.
I would like to say that it's flattering to think that it's about the WASP squadron, but I don't think that's really true. I think the truth is that the WASP story is very compelling, and I think that remembering and honoring and passing that story along is fun. Once you hear the story, you want to tell other people about it. We are fortunate to be able to participate in helping to make that happen. But we are not alone. As I mentioned before, the National WASP Museum in Sweetwater does a great job. Texas Women's University has the archives for the WASP, which is quite phenomenal. The mighty 8th Museum in Georgia has a phenomenal WASP exhibit. The 99s put on events centered around the WASP, and Women in Aviation, different chapters, do another great contributing story about what happened in the past and what's going on today. Many of today's current female aviators can tell you that they were inspired by the story of the WASP. And so while it's flattering to think that we've done a lot, I think that we are just one part of something that's really important.
Excellent. And again, 12 Planes of Christmas, the T-6 Nella. Tell us again what you're helping to raise the money for.
A Garmin GI 275 into the panel of Nella. It will improve our operations because it weighs less than the vacuum equipment that's in there now. It advances our function, And should we inadvertently find ourselves in a smoke or cloud condition, we will be able to fly, even though we are not planning ever to fly with instruments. We will have the capability of handling the plane safely in an inadvertent situation.
Good. Well, before we wrap up, Elaine, any last thoughts tonight?
No, but I will say this. I love that airplane. Wouldn't it be fun if we could keep it going until it amassed 60 million miles of flying time?
That would be.
The WASP, and there was one WASP who, when they were disbanded and she was being interviewed, was asked, really, did you do anything truly to support the war? And she said, you don't amass 60 million miles of flying by slapping on lipstick and flirting with the boys.
Great story.
That's a great one. Yeah. Ellie, any final thoughts for you?
I just want to thank all of the people that support Nella and are there to help us, and for all of the contributors, and even those who just express their support by telling the story. Oh, everybody makes a difference, and we are so proud to be part of that.
Excellent. Go visit the 12 Planes of Christmas website, and you can see not only the T-6 Nella, but all the other aircraft that are featured. There's plenty of airplanes and great stories to go around this year, and we'll cover some more of those throughout the month. But please, if you can, please support the T-6 Nella and the WASP Squadron. Ladies, thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you for watching. Don't forget to click that like, subscribe, or follow button so we can let you know about future shows. And if you have any ideas for topics you'd like to hear about, just send Leah Black an email at media@cafhq.org. Until next time, from the Commemorative Air Force, I'm Steve Buss. Good night.